On this episode of the DCeric Show, I show you an unreleased game, which would be Geist Force for Sega Dreamcast. The game is not at all a fully completed version of the game, and the game was never completed as far as we know. Also, this video presentation didn't play the game on physical Dreamcast hardware, so some of the graphical problems can be related to that. At E3 in 1998, Sega wanted to show us what the Dreamcast was all about, and wanted to show us a game they were going to launch with the system. That, of course, would be Geist Force for the Sega Dreamcast. Of course, when Dreamcast was released, the release of Geist Force never happened. Everybody who's seen the demo at E3 and heard of this game wanted to know if the game was ever going to get released. Well, Sega never really gave us a good reason why the game never got released, but I have some possible reasons why the game never seen the light of day. If you didn't know already, the game pretty much looks like a clone of Star Fox, and instead of using animals as your main characters, Sega decided they would use humans instead. Of course, it makes sense, right? A great idea that might get an older age audience that is into sci-fi action. Star Fox 64 was released for Nintendo 64 in 1997, so I'm sure the reason why Geist Force was shown at E3 in 1998 was to go directly at Nintendo 64 in competition with Star Fox 64. The Dreamcast got released in 1998 for Japan and in 1999 for the US audience. What I'm thinking is when Dreamcast got released, Geist Force was still not a fully completed game. From what I believe, the reps at Sega had said to the developers they would cancel the game because it would have no real effort in competing against their competitors. Geist Force, if released, would have gotten released almost a year after Star Fox 64. Star Fox 64 was a hit, but by the time Dreamcast was getting released, Nintendo fans were playing newer and better games. That would mean less people interested in Star Fox, so if Sega wanted to grab attention to those Nintendo fans, Geist Force just wouldn't do it. If at all possible, if Sega's decisions were true by my beliefs, I would have to say they have chosen wisely. The game looked great and the game played fine, but the concept and idea were similar to Star Fox, and there would have been no real concern for Nintendo. Alright, so now on to this beta, which I am unsure includes more than 2 playable levels in the main game. That is because I haven't beat level 2 from the main game and have tested levels from the beta menu selection screen. Even though there may only be 2 playable levels, that doesn't mean they don't come without certain bugs. At the beta menu screen it says there is 6 playable levels. Well, we already know that levels 1 and 2 are playable. Level 3 is unplayable that I know of. I let it sit on the screen for about 5 minutes and it never loaded. Level 4 worked and would have shown how amazing the graphics were for the Dreamcast. However, you can only get so far before your spacecraft falls below the map and gets stuck, making this level unplayable. In level 5, it looks like to me this is a demonstration of objects that would be included in the game. No worries though, because eventually you do come to the end of what looked like a demonstration and have total control of your ship. Once you have control of your ship, there is one enemy, and as soon as you shoot him once, he is dead, and there is no other enemies in the level. As you keep flying through the level, you'll finally make an entrance to some sort of space fortress, but you can only go so far before your spacecraft falls through the map, and again making this level unplayable. Alright, next up we have level 6. Not much to say here, this level is extremely buggy and unfinished. The graphics weren't placed in your player's spacecraft or in any of the other spacecrafts in the level. So you'll see a black color in place of what would have been the finished product in the near future. Of course, we didn't get the finished product. And in this level you can only get so far before once again falling through the map, making this level unplayable. Apparently I heard there was supposed to be a lava level, and I think that it's level 3, but it never loaded. It's probably because I wasn't using actual Dreamcast hardware. Next up we have Mike's room, which I guess was supposed to be a room for the main characters in the game, or just a test option. However, what we are presented with is the first level and second level in the game without enemies, pretty much demonstrating both levels. Next we have Nime's room, which once again could have had something to do with the main character's room in the game. However, we are presented with a sound test of the game, where you can listen to the main music and sound effects in the game. Now I know this is not a full game, but I'm sure there is some people who are willing to actually play the first 2 levels. The first level isn't that difficult, although flying around trying to kill the first boss can be a bit tricky, but nonetheless the boss can be defeated. The second level isn't that hard either until you get to the boss, which I haven't defeated, and it's not that it's hard to fly, he is a bit tricky for me. The game is similar to Star Fox, and once you start the game the controls will be a bit similar. You fly around using the joystick and shoot with the A button, and when you hold the A button over an enemy it locks in place for a missile attack. X would be used for somewhat of a turbo button, while B was used for an alternate missile attack which helps destroy the bosses. The left and right triggers make your spacecraft move from left to right in a sort of strafing maneuver. You can use the Dreamcast keyboard for extra debugging features which will pretty much allow your character to become invincible, and you can also unlock other features. The keyboard allows us to use the following features if, of course, you have a Dreamcast keyboard that has the S3 button. Now to share with you what the following commands will allow you to do. S3 opens up debug user menus, D opens debug options, U opens user options, S pauses game, T button toggles menu screen, arrow keys navigate menu after pressing a letter, F12 suicides player's ship, F1 gives player's ship 9,999 shield points, and Z gives rapid fire laser for the player. Now, because there was a menu that allowed you to test the levels in the game, I am unsure if the same problems follow in the main game, because I wasn't able to defeat the second level. Again, I wouldn't say this is a fully playable game, but I did find the first two levels pretty fun. Well, I guess I've come to the end of the show. There isn't much to review here. It would have been great to see the game completed, but it comes to a complete understanding why the game wasn't released for the Dreamcast. Competition would have made Geist Force a bad sell, and the games that did get released for Dreamcast can pretty much show you that Geist Force might have been a bad seller. There is two versions of the game. The other version goes by the name Geist Force Resorted, that fixes some of the problems that make the one released by Assembler Games kill Dreamcast systems. You have been warned. I have no clue if the Geist Force Resorted truly fixes the problems, and note, the original might possibly cause harm. It was the reason this game for this video didn't use physical Dreamcast hardware. I'd like to thank Kevin from Assembler Games for making this video happen, because without him we would have never got our hands on a torrent and a nice professionally pressed disc of the game. If you'd like to get your hands on a copy and give Kevin the best of congrats, head on over to assemblergames.com. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the DCeric Show and come back to see another game that I probably wouldn't have kept my hands off of.